Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is SUKKAH Daf Yud Aleph. We begin 2 lines from the top of the Amud. Says the Gemara, Lishna Achrina Amrila. There was actually another version of this statement of Amar, Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. You see, yesterday we learned in the name of Shmuel that sleeping beneath a canopied bed, or beneath a bed, which is within a sukkah, poses a concern because this fellow beneath this canopy is really no longer in the sukkah. And the Gemara tells us that the concern applies when either the canopy is large enough in size, is 10 tefachim high, in which case we considered it an oil, or even if it's lower than 10, but it has kaviyus, it has permanence, that makes up for its lack of height, and one is not meant to sleep beneath it. Today, the Gemara will add a third aspect. We have something called kilas chasanim, a canopy intended for a chasan, in celebration of the wedding. Here, we're more lenient than all the other cases. The Gemara says even if it's very large in size, it's greater than 10 tefachim, no concern there. According to one shita, even if it has a flat roof, there's no concern. And the reason is because it's such a temporary thing, and therefore we don't have to reckon with it. Even if the chassan is sleeping beneath this canopy, it's as though he's still in the sukkah. We don't take the canopy into account. Says the Gemara once again, Lishna Achrina Amrila. There was another version of Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mashmol. Mutar lishan bekilas chasan besukkah. One may sleep beneath this chasan canopy, which is within a sukkah, because it was fashioned without a flat roof. It would come up to a point, like a tent, in which case it doesn't really have a flat roof. It's not an oil. And the chiddush is afal pi shegvaya asar, even though it's 10 tefachim high, which generally poses a concern. Here we don't have a concern because, as we're going to see soon in the Gemara, it's so not kavua, it's so not a temporary thing, and therefore it does not interfere with the sukkah. Says the Gemara, Meisvei, listen to this kasha. Hayoshen bekila b'sukkah layatei dechei vase. If one sleeps in a kila, beneath a canopy, which is within a sukkah, he's not yaitze. And the Gemara assumes that we're including all types of canopies, even kilas chasanim. So you see, it does take him out of the sukkah. Apparently, we are speaking about a kila that is different than the one we described. It has a flat roof, in which case it's an oil, and he's no longer in the sukkah, as opposed to the kilas chasanim, which comes to a point and is not considered an oil. Toshma, listen to this right. The Brisa says, Naklitin Shnai. We have another 2 types of canopies. Naklitin are the two-pole arrangements. That's you have your bed, you have a pole at the headpost, a pole going up at the other side, and something running across, and then you hang a sheet or a canopy over that arrangement, and it results in an overturned V. It comes up to a point. Naklitin Shnayim. Those are the 2 poles. The kinoifos arba. Kinoifos is describing the 4-pole arrangement, where you have a pole rising from all 4 corners of your bed, over which you spread a canopy. So what is the halacha if it happens to be in a sukkah? Piris al gabi kinoifos psula. If you spread a sheet over the kinoifos, in which case you have a flat roof, that's possible because beneath that is considered an oil, and you're no longer in the sukkah. However, al gabi naklitin kshera. Beneath the naklitin arrangement, that's the 2-pole arrangement, that's fine because it doesn't have a flat roof. It's not considered an oil. However, says the Brisa, ubilvad, provided shalo yehu naklitin gevayin minamita asar tefachim. These naklitin, these poles, a double pole arrangement, should not rise 10 tefachim above your bed. Meaning, this chiluk between naklitin, which are considered a non-oil entity, and the kinefis, which are considered yes oil, That's only provided the canopy is within 10 tefach. Says the Gemara, apparently, even the naklitim, where the canopy simply comes to a point, there's no flat roof. If it should be 10 tefachim above your bed, it's possible. Even though it doesn't have a roof. So how can you tell me a kilas chasanim is fine, doesn't pose a concern despite the fact that it's very high? Because it has no gag, because it comes to a pointy roof. Then why by naklitin, which are also pointy, do we say if it's above 10, it's a concern? Says the Gemara, there's a difference. Shani naklitin dekvi. Naklitin not different than kilas chasanim. Kilas chasanim is just this temporary, here today, gone tomorrow canopy. Naklitin are more firm. They're affixed to the bed. They're sort of part of the furniture. They're here to stay for a while. They're kavua. In which case, we say, if it's above 10 tefachim, in conjunction with the fact that it has some kviyas, there's a concern there. Says the Gemara, 1 second. If naklitin are considered kvi, if it has permanence, then why are you differentiating between naklitin, where you say, well, up until 10 tefachim you're okay, the concern only begins after 10, whereas by kinoifos you tell me that even below 10 it's possible. What's the difference? Says the Gemara, legabi kinoifos lekfi. It's all relative. Naklitin is a step down from kinoifos. Kinoifos are really kavua. They're really part and parcel of the furniture there. So that canopy, on account of its permanence, that makes up for its height. Even if it's less than 10 tefachim high, we regard it as an oil with respect to the sukkah. As opposed to the naklitin, although they're somewhat permanent, but not as permanent as the kinoifos, in which case we say, look, if it's below 10, don't worry about it. But if it's already large in size, above 10, the fact that it has already the height, plus has a little permanence to it, both factors together generate an oil concern. So legabe kinoifos lekvi, naklitin, with respect, in relation to kinoifos, are not considered kavua. Kinoifos are a step above. Therefore, naklitin are more lenient. However, in relation to the kila, legabe kila kvi, with respect to kila, of course, naklitin are a step above. They're more kavua than kilas chasanim. And therefore, when it comes to kilas chasanim, we're not concerned at all. And therefore, even if it's above 10 tefachim, don't worry about it. So basically, we have 3 categories. We have something which is very kavua, in which case we say that even if it's less than 10 tefachim, it's considered an oil on account of its permanence, on account of its quality. Then we have something which is not really kavua, like naklitin. So only if it's large in size are we concerned with it. Then we have the third madrega, a step below that, kila, which is totally not kavua at all. In which case we say, irrelevant of its size, don't worry about it. So up until now we spoke about a kilas chasanim, which came up to a point, ein lo gag. The Gemara will add another dimension. Darash Rabba bar Yehuda, he maintained that you can be makel even more by kilas chasanim because of its temporary nature. Mutar lishan bekila, one may sleep in a kila. Taisus is gurish the words kilas chasanim. Afal b'sheish l'gag, even if it has a flat roof, a flat top. Afal b'shegvay asara, even if it's 10 tefachim high, because it's just a fleeting thing and it doesn't interfere with the sukkah. Says the Gemara, Keman Rabbi Yehuda. Do you mean to say that Rabbi bar Yehuda is ruling like Rabbi Yehuda? The Amar lo yasi oil arai umevatel oil keva. Rabbi Yehuda holds that a sukkah is considered a permanent dwelling, in which case we say that, let's say there's a bed in the sukkah. There's no concern with sleeping beneath that bed because the bed is just a temporary oil. It's something portable, and it doesn't interfere with the sukkah, which is a oil kava. It's a makom of sukkah. This is just a kli, comes and goes. It doesn't interfere. And apparently Rabbi Bar Huna, who's allowing an individual to sleep beneath a kilas chasanim, even though it has a roof, even though it's 10 tefachim high, is following Rabbi Yehuda. That's not concerned with an oil arai interfering with an oil kva. Where do we find Rabbi Yehuda's shita? This is not. Rabbi Yehuda, lishan tachasamita. We were accustomed to sleeping beneath a bed in a sukkah, b'fnei askenim, in front of the elders, in front of the chachamim, and they never voiced their opposition. Apparently that's okay. And the reason is because the mita is merely a temporary oil and doesn't interfere, doesn't encroach with the sukkah. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, that he is following Rabbi Yehuda's shita, v'lei malach Rabbi Yehuda. Why wouldn't Rabbi Bar Huna simply say, you know what, halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda? Why does he have to describe the halacha in this flowery way? Chasanim. Just state briefly, we follow Rabbi Yehuda. Answers the Gemara, Amar lach Rabbi Yehuda. Had he only said that, Havamina, perhaps I would say, Hani mili mita. When it comes to a bed within a sukkah, over there we follow Rabbi Yehuda, and it's not because the oil harai will not interfere with the oil kva. That's not the rationale behind that halacha. Perhaps it's a specific svara pertaining to a bed. Hani mili mita del gaba asuya. What's a bed intended for? Creating an oil beneath it? No. Primary function of a bed is l'gaba, for the top, l'gaba asuya. It's intended for its lying space. And therefore, perhaps, it does not have a shem oil at all. So it's not related to the svara of oil arai not interfering with oil kva. A bed is not oil, period. Avakila de l'seich asuya, as opposed to a canopy, which is intended to function as to provide shelter for within it. Perhaps over there, you can't apply that svara. And perhaps since it's an oil, be it an oil arai, it would interfere with the sukkah. Kamash Malon. That's why Rabbi Bar Huna presented this halacha by describing a kila, mutalishim lekila, because he's trying to teach us a chiddush in pshat and havana. Kamash Malon, time of Rabbi Yehuda. The reason why Rabbi Yehuda allows sleeping beneath a bed in a sukkah is not because the bed is non-oil. It is an oil. Rather, the loy osi oil arai umevatel oil kava. Because the bed, which is merely a temporary oil, cannot interfere with the oil kva, which is a sukkah. And therefore, loishna mita, it's irrelevant of whether we're speaking about a bed, loishna kila, or a canopy. And actually, there's a shaila in the Mefarshim. See, it would seem from the Gemara's wording that Rabbi Rav Huna is following Rabbi Yehuda strictly. But others learn that, at the end of the day, akilas chasanim, because of its lack of chashivas and lack of permanence, even the Rabbanon, who hold that one may not sleep beneath a bed, would agree in this case that akilas chasanim never poses a concern within a sukkah. Okay, to summarize, we had basically three categories of temporary oyels within a sukkah. So we just go back a bit to yesterday. We had a whole list, and today we added another case as well, the kilas chasan. So let's say we have a bed, a mita, a standard kila, a standard canopy, ordinat klitin, which was that V-shaped canopy over the bed, supported by two poles, one on either side of the bed. In all three cases, we say that they're not really kavua. They have some degree of kvius, but not to a great extent. Therefore, we say if it's less than 10 tefachim, there's no concern. However, by kinoifis, which is the four-pole arrangement around the bed, over there we say, since it is kavua, even if it's less than 10 tefachim, it would pose a concern. Today we added another case of kilas chasanim. So according to one version of the Gemara, it had no flat roof. It came to a point. According to the other version, even with a flat gag, we say, since it's really something so temporary, even if it's large in size, if it's 10 tefachim high, it wouldn't pose a concern. Continues the Mishnah. Hidla aleha es a gefen. So he has a sukkah, and he's strung over that sukkah a gefen, a vine, a sadlas, or a pumpkin, the leaves of a pumpkin, a kisus, some type of plant, perhaps ivy, So these are being used as SUKKAH. The problem is, they're still attached to the ground. And he added some of his own SUKKAH on these items, psula, because the sukkah is now being covered by SUKKAH pas. However, if he added way more SUKKAH kasher than SUKKAH pasel, in which case the SUKKAH pasel is now batal b'reiv, or he happened to detach those plants, now his sukkah is kasher. Now, what's the general guideline when it comes to SUKKAH? This is the general rule. Kol shu mekabel tumah, any item which is considered a utensil which is mekabel tumah, or ve'en gedulim in eretz, it doesn't really grow from the ground, ein mesachik by, it's not suitable for SUKKAH. However, if something is not a finished utensil and is not mekabel tumah, and v'gedulim in eretz, it grows from the ground, it's kasher misachichin by. Continues the Gemara. Yosef Rav Yosef, come to Rav Huna. Rav Yosef is sitting in front of Rav Huna. V'Yosef ka'amar, and Rav Yosef was sitting and saying over the following pshat. The Mishnah said, if he happened to use a mechubel karka for his SUKKAH, oisha katzat ksher, if he went ahead and he snipped it off the ground, that's fine. Says Rav Yosef, in the name of Rav, v'amar Rav, that's not enough, because you have to make your sukkah. You have to build it manually. Pasuk says, Chag sukkah is tasalacha. And therefore, says Rav, just detaching it off the ground is not enough. V'tzorech linanea. You have to actually give that SUKKAH a bit of a shake, which constitutes somewhat of a maaseh. And now you made your sukkah. Let's go over to Rashi. Around halfway down the Amud, by the word Gemara. V'Yosef, says Rashi. V'Yosef Rav Yosef v'ka'amar hachi. Rav Yosef was presenting the following pshat. Ha, this not ashakat ksherim. The Mishnah which speaks about detaching the tree. Amar Rav Allah. Rav added, Nihid ein tzarech lachzor l'sois rekula. Although you don't have to take apart all your SUKKAH, but you still have to do something. Aval tzarech l'naneh ktsas. You have to shake a bit. Oisam shehuschachu b'mechubar. Those plants which were previously attached and are now being detached, you have to go ahead, give them a little shake, a little lift. Which is now considered like an asiyah, like he's fashioning, like he's manually building a sukkah. Because otherwise, psula, misham tase, v'loy menase. It's considered done, made, by default. It's circumstantially there. He didn't do it. And it's not good. Why? The pasuk says like this: Chaga sukkah is tasel. We learn sukkah is tase. You have to make it a sukkah. Kishata oisa. When you build your sukkah, speaking about the SUKKAH, when you present your SUKKAH to heru'i sukkah, at that point it should be roi, should be kosher to serve as a sukkah, as opposed to a case where when the SUKKAH arrived onto that sukkah, it was not right, it was still attached to the ground. And now he went ahead and detached it. The SUKKAH has been made there. He didn't put it on as SUKKAH kosher, and therefore it doesn't work. As opposed to a case where it was done when it was still puzzle, and now he's going to fix it up a bit, amend it, adapt it. That's not enough. Like this fellow is trying to be machshir the SUKKAH pasal by simply detaching it off the ground, without actually demolishing the SUKKAH and rebuilding it. So the point is that the Torah requires that the sukkah be built by a person. When we say built, we mean built as a sukkah, as a functioning sukkah, as opposed to a case where he piled SUKKAH pasal, still attached to the ground, on his sukkah. At that point, he didn't make a sukkah. He didn't make a functioning sukkah. So although he follows up by snipping it off the ground, the SUKKAH is lying there from before. He didn't place it there as functioning SUKKAH. That's called mina asay. It's just there on its own. So you have to do something. What do you have to do? Says Rashi, Umiu ne'anua, just shaking it is enough. Karlastirhu. It's close enough to redoing the schach. That's sufficient. He picks up each branch on its own, and puts it down. Does the same with the other ones. So this is the chiddush of Rav. When you go and detach it, you have to be menaneya to sort of refresh the schach. And now it's Chag HaSukkah, it's tasa. You've made it, you've built it as a functioning sukkah. Says the Gemara, Amalei Rav Huna. Rav Huna responded to Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef presented this halacha, this chiddush in the name of Rav. Responds Rav Huna, Shmuel Amra. That's incorrect. It's actually Shmuel who said this halacha. Adrinu Rav Yosef lapei. Rav Yosef turned away his face in anger. V'amalei, and he said, Atumi kaminalach. Did I mean to say Deloy Amra Shmuel, that only Rav said it and not Shmuel? I didn't say that. Amra Rav, Amra Shmuel. Perhaps Rav said it and also Shmuel. Why are you challenging the accuracy of my halacha? I wasn't saying it exclusively in the name of Rav, at the exclusion of Shmuel. Amalei Rav Huna, no, says Rav Huna, Hachi kaminalach. This is what I meant to tell you. This Shmuel Amar V'loy Rav, no. It was inaccurately attributed to Rav. This is Shmuel's halacha. Rav disagrees with this halacha. The Rav Akshuri Machsha. Rav would be perfectly fine, even without shaking the schach that has now been detached from the ground. Let's go back to Rashi. It's about parallel to our position in the Gemara. Adrin Rav Yosef lapei bekas, he turned away. He says, what do you mean? Maybe Rav and Shmuel both said it. No, says Rav Huna. Rav is Akshur Himachsha Beloinea, no, without shaking the Kosavar. The attachment is considered completion of the Asiyah. And that's called Tasa. Placement on your sukkah, while it was still attached, is not a complete Masa. It's a Masa, but it's pending further developments. And when he goes and detaches that schach off the ground, he is completing the Masa. He's activating the schach. He's enabling it for sukkah use. Now, he's completing the Asiyah, and he's doing it himself. And that's Tasa. He's now making it into a functioning schach. That's fine. There's no need to go ahead and shake it and move it. This detachment on its own is considered Asiyah. So what then is the problem of Tasa v'lo min Asi? What's the classic case, says Rashi? Ve'echidami Tasa v'lo min Asi. He has a pile of bundles out in the field, and he starts digging, hollowing out the pile. Lasas lesukkah. In which case he leaves the upper layer of bundles untouched, intact. So there was no manual contact there. He didn't actually arrange the upper bundles. They were left as is. That's loy min asi. That's just us. It's there by default. He didn't do anything to them. He didn't do anything to the schach of his creative sukkah. He picks off one of the walls, so to speak, and digs into the pile, and pulls out some bundles, hollows out the center, and there you go. Bingo, you have a sukkah. You have walls, you have a schach. There was no tasa there. There was no asiyah. He didn't fashion that schach. Masha'enken, in this case, says Rav, this fellow who detached the tree, zehu masa shalom. This very detachment is the masa. Shenigma behersha. He finished it behersha. So Rav holds that detachment also constitutes masa. So although it was already lying on a sukkah, but it wasn't finished. It wasn't a finished product. It wasn't a finished masa. So when he turns around and detaches it from the ground, that in itself is considered the masa. Because now he's enabling the schach for use. He's activating the schach. So whatever was done until that point was just up in the air, was a pending masa. It wasn't finished. This is the completion. This is the Gemara masa. And therefore the sukkah was manually built by a person. Therefore says Rav Huna, don't attribute this chumrah to Rav. He doesn't hold of ni'anua. You don't have to shake it. Once you detach it, that in itself is a maasa on its own. Continues the Gemara with another example, where Rav would hold that enabling, activating, is sufficient maasa. We know that by tzitzis as well. You need to do it manually. The pasuk says, "Gdilim taslach." You have to make it. It can't just be formed by its own, by default. However, Rav would hold that activating the tzitzis through a maasa is enough. As we're going to see. Kiha der Rav Amram Chasida. There was a story with Rav Amram Chasida. Ramat Chelta. He applied chutei tchelis, meaning tzitzis, leparzuma, to the clothing, the inshi basic. The members of his household. Rashi learns to his wife. He held that tzitzis is not a mitzvah sasesha as mangrama. You're meant to be mekayim tzitzis even at night. It's not a time-related mitzvah, in which case even nashim achayiv. In any case, what did he do? Talon v'le pasak roshei chutin shalem. Instead of applying 4 separate strings, he took one long string, folded it 4 times, and he took this 4-fold, this 4-ply string, pushed it through the hole of the tzitzis, of the corner of the beged, and then he went ahead and of course he tied it to the beged, but it was still a single 4-fold thread. Talon, he hung them, v'le pasak roshei chutin shalhem, without detaching, without separating those loops at the end. He didn't actually detach the strings. So now he tied it to the beged, and he had a shaila. Asal kamei Rav Chiya bar Ashi. He came to Rav Chiya bar Ashi. What should I do? Amar lei, he responded, Hachem Rav. This is what Rav said in this case. Mefaskem eng shir. Just cut them apart and you're okay. Although, they're already attached to the beged. They're already knotted to the beged. You would think the asiyah is done and over with. So how could you go ahead and retroactively be machshir the tzitzis after the fact? There was no asiyah behechsher, because when he tied it onto the beged, it was as yet undetached. It was a 4-fold thread. No mefas k'vnei shir. Just detach the corners, cut the loops, and they're okay. Alma, what do we see from here? Psikasan zu asiyasan. Snipping them apart is considered the asiyah, because right now he's activating the tzitzis. He's enabling them for use. This is the Gemar asiyah, and he will mekayim tasa. Hachanam here is all by SUKKAH. Ktitzasan zu asiyasan. Detachment is called the asiyah. So this is Shitas Rav, whereas Shmuel holds that no. When you place a tzach on your sukkah, that tzach has to be kosher for it to be considered an asiyah of sukkah. When you tie those strings on your beged, they have to be proper strings, separate threads, so that the asiyah should be behechsher and considered a proper asiyah. You can't do it after the fact and have it applied retroactively. Says the Gemara, Shmuel Amrin Psikasan zu asiyasan. Is that so that Shmuel does not subscribe to this concept that snipping them apart is considered the asiyah? V'atani Shmuel Mishor B'chira. Let's say he took a doubled over thread, right, 4-ply thread, as we mentioned, and not only that, he tried to cut corners. So he had his beged with 2 holes. He tried to do 2 at a time. So he took the 4-ply thread, pushed it through one of the corners, and let it hang down a bit, came back up, pushed it through the other one, and let it hang down, and then he did the tying, and now you have 2 sets of tzitzits, but they're really still all connected as one. So 2 deficiencies. One, on account of the fact that the string itself is not separated. It's a 4-ply thread running all across the tzitzits. Number 2, both corners are technically still connected. So Shmuel spoke about this case. Hitel lishnei kronis b'vas achas. He applied the tzitzis to 2 corners of the beged at once. V'achakach pasak roshei chutin shalahen. After which he went ahead and detached the chutin. Ksher, it's okay. So we see psikasan is called a masa, which is machshir. That's Shmuel. My love should not assume that the cases where he first tied it onto the beged and then afterwards followed through by snipping. Shekoisher v'achach poisik. Says, well, no, shek poisik v'achach koisher. What happened was he first detached the threads and then tied the tzitzis onto the beged. So all he really did was he took a 4-ply string, pushed it through one corner of the beged, pushed it through the other, but didn't actually tie it onto the beged. Pushing through is not really an asiyah. So no harm was done as of yet. And then he went ahead, detached the strings, separated them, and then proceeded with the kshir, which is the real asiyah, and that's behesher, and that's fine. Says Gemara, if that's the case, what's the chiddush? Poisik. V'achach koisher. If we're speaking that he first detached the threads and then really tied the tzitz onto the beged, remember, why discuss it? It's pashut. Now the tema, perhaps I would think, that's also a problem. But knaf, b'shas psil, perhaps, it needs to be a separate corner. Each thing has to be independent at the time of psil when he's actually pushing the threads through the hole in the beged. But like in this case, you don't have it because when he pushed it through, he was doing 2 at a time. Kamash Malon, the chiddush is, there's no concern. So in any case, we learn that with respect to sukkah, with respect to tzitzis, which have this thing in common, that you need to have a asiyah, tasa. What if it was done in a manner which is not yet fit for mitzvah, but then he came back and he fixed it up? He completed it, he activated it through a manual maaseh. Rav says it's okay, Shmuel says it's not. Meisvei, listen to this kasha on Rav. Talon v'lei pasak, chrashi chutin shalahen. If he strung it onto the beged, and then without detaching the threads beforehand, v'lei pasak, rashi chutin shalahen, psul. It's possible. My love, psul no'elam. Should not assume that psul means forever, because once you tied it onto the beged, it's too late. V'tifta the Rav. This is the kasha on Rav. Amlach Rav, my psulin. When the Brisa says psulin, it means psulin ad sheyifseku, until they get separated and detached. But once you do that, it's certainly fine, because that's called the asiyah of the tzitzis. Shmuel amar psulin oilam. The Brisa says psulin. It means for all time, because once he attached it to the beged in a manner which was unfit for tzitzis use, so when he comes back and he snips them apart, it's too late. It was already asiyah. It was already done. Done in a manner which is not called a proper asiyah. V'chein amar Levi, psul no'olam. He has well learned that the Brisa is referring to lo'olam. V'chein amar Rav Masna, amar Shmuel, psul no'olam. Igad Amrit is another version of Rav Masna, amar Rav Masna, b'didya v'uda. I had a personal account with Shmuel of this type of case where it was strung up and then separated. I approached Shmuel. You cannot use these tzitzis. Says the Gemara, we're going to have a kasha on Rav. Meisvei, listen to this price. If he strung up the tzitzis and then detached the threads, the tzitzis is possible. That's number one. We have another brisa regarding sukkah. The brisa begins with the pasuk tas. The pasuk reads, Chag ha-sukkos tas al-chashivas yamin. We learn from here, you have to actually make it. You can't have a circumstantial sukkah, a default sukkah. You have to actually build your sukkah. Tas as opposed to something which was just there. Mikan amru. From this we learn, hidla aleo esagefen. If he strung the vine over a sukkah, vesadalah, so the pumpkin, vesakisas, the other plant, vesichach al gaban, he added some schach psula. The sukkah is possible. Now, what type of plant are we speaking about? The vine is still attached to the ground? Heichi dame. What's the situation here? Ilem mishloi katetsan. Are we speaking that he hadn't yet detached it from the ground? It's still attached. Then my irya mishum tasav lemin asid. Why does the brisa have to relate the problem, the psul, to the pasuk of tasa, which teaches us v'lemin asid? You have a much more simple problem here. Typically, it's a much more basic deficiency. It's still connected to the ground. It can't serve as schach. Apparently, was speaking that he detached it. So he strung the vine over a sukkah, then went over and detached the vine from the ground. The Brisa tells us it doesn't work. Why? Simply detaching it is not called a maisa. And since it was placed on the sukkah when it was not yet right to serve as SUKKAH, so you have SUKKAH which is just lying here without having manually being placed here, because when he placed it, it was not yet right for SUKKAH. He didn't make a functioning sukkah. El B'Shakot was speaking that he detached Uktani Psula. What does the Brisa say? It's possible because it's Tasav Le'min Asay Ushmam Adloi Amrina. Apparently we don't say Ktitzasan Zu Asiyasan. Detachment is considered like fashioning it. V'tiyuf to the Rav. And this is another kasher on Rav. So we have two Brises which are kasher on Rav. One by tzitzis, where we see snipping apart those threads after the fact doesn't work. And same thing regarding SUKKAH. Detaching the SUKKAH from the ground after the fact doesn't either work. Amlach Rav will respond, the Brisa of SUKKAH isn't really a kasha. Hachav my skin, you know what we're speaking about? The shalfinu shalufi. When he detached the tree, he left it there. He pulled it, but just barely detached it, in which case, it's not really visibly detached from the ground. It is technically detached, according to the way Rashi learns. But since it's not obviously detached, there's a rabbinic chacham who had a chashash, a marasa ayin, and therefore don't use this sukkah. Taisa says another pshat. He says it's detached, but it's still somewhat hanging there. The skin, the bark is still attached. In which case, it would seem from Taisa that even Minat Torah, it's not considered off the ground. So that's the case. Certainly, if you would have properly detached it in a way which makes it obvious to all that it's off the ground, says Rav, of course, that's okay. This hechsher, this enablement, this activation is considered the asiyah. Okay, says the Gemara, you've addressed the Brisa of Sukkah. Mikol mokem tolon. V'achech pasak kashel Rav. What about the first Brisa? He strung those tzitzis and then was pasak the chutim. It's possible. That's a kasha to Rav. Indeed, says the Gemara kasha, we leave it as an unresolved kasha. So just briefly, again, we spoke about the din of asiyah, which applies to sukkah. Chagah sukkah is tasalacha, which applies to tzitzis. Gdilam tasalacha. In both cases, the item has to be manually created, manually fashioned, to be considered tasa. A classic example of v'loy min ha'asay is the case Rashi brings, where he hollows out a pile of bundles, and there he goes. He has a sukkah. It doesn't work, because he didn't build a SUKKAH. It just happened to be sitting here by default. That's asay. It's just done. It's there on its own. So we learned in the Mishnah, what's considered kosher SUKKAH? A, has to grow from the ground. B, can't be mekabel tumah. And 3, it has to be detached off the ground. So what happens if he has a tree on his sukkah and then detaches the tree? It says Rav, detachment is the asiyah. Up until now, it was just lying dormant. The asiyah began, but it was pending further development. It was awaiting his detachment. Now I completed the asiyah. Now I activated it. Now I added the spiritual dimension. I enabled it for sukkah use. That is the asiyah. That's called tasa. Same thing regarding tzitzis. Even though when he strung it up and he tied it to this beged, it wasn't really kosher. It was a folded over string. But afterwards he goes in and splits it apart, cuts the loops. Ktsitzasan, psikasan, zui asiyasan. Shmuel maintains you can't do that. Fact of that matter is, the tzitzis was already strung up on the beged. Physically, it was done. The SUKKAH was on the sukkah. So he says you can't go ahead and fix it after the fact. And therefore by SUKKAH, the only way to address this concern is to actually do min aneah, shake that SUKKAH, to add some personal dimension to it, to go ahead and show that there's an asiyah. That's enough. That's enough to be considered a tas. Perhaps this question of whether a ktitzasan is considered an asiyah or not is based on machlokes tanoim. The Mishnah says, Avar v'liktan pasel. What does this mean? Let's go over to Rashi, 10 lines from the top. Avar Liktan, Anvei Hadas, he picked the berries off his Hadas. It's not like, come on, a berry may not have, a Hadas may not be laden with berries. Im Hoyu Anavav Merubin Ma'alav, possible. If this Hadas was laden with many berries, more than its leaves, it's possible. Havale Menumar, looks like it's spotted, like Hadaru. It's not pretty. So you're not meant to use it. And if you take off the berries, of course, it's kosher. V'imiyatay kosher. However, ve'im ma'atim yantiv. Not meant to do that on yantiv. The masakin mana. La'achsher es hapsol. But the Rabban not meant to do that because you're enabling the hadas for use. You're fixing something. It looks like you're fixing a kli. You're not meant to do it with the Rabbanon. What happens if he did it? Uktani b'brayis. Overall, divrei chachamim. He was over on the Isra Rabbanon. She'amr eim ma'atim b'yantiv. V'liktam b'yantiv. And he picked it off on yantiv. What's the halacha? We're speaking that the hadas was already put together with the lulav and the arava bundled together. So now you decide on yantiv to pick up those berries. Possible. The hadas is still possible. So getting back to the Gemara, avar v'liktan possible. It doesn't help. It's too late. Divrei Rabbi Shimon bar Yotzadik. V'chachamim machshir. I say it's okay. How do you explain the machlekes? Sabro. Now the Bnei Beis HaMedrash who presented this Mishnah, they figured it's going to be machlekes whether or not Ktsitsa is called an Asiyah, in accordance with the machlekes Rav and Shmuel. So those who presented the Mishnah figured like this. They had two premises. They're working based on two hanachas. Number one, the kuli amal lulav tzarech eged. Both shittas in this Mishnah hold that a lulav needs to be bundled together. Meaning the lulav and the hadas and the rava has to be tied together. You have to create a new entity here. That's number one. And it has to be done manually, with an asiyah. V'yalfina lulav misukkah. We derive lulav from sukkah, where it says, D'chsiv gabi sukkah ta'asav le'men asih. Has to be manually made, likewise by lulav. This igud, this bundle, has to be fashioned. You have to fashion a new entity. A lulav hadas arava combination. So assuming these two things are true, how are we going to explain the machlokes in the Mishnah? In a case where the hadas had many berries, and after tying it together, he decided to remove the berries. One shita says aser, one shita says mutter. Apparently, the machlokes is based on that question. The question between Rav and Shmuel. The man the machshir savar amrinan gabi sukkah tzitzasen zu asiyasen. The chacham who are machshir hold that picking those berries, even after the fact, even once it's been bundled together with the other meaning, that's okay. Because just as by sukkah we say, tzitzasen zu asiyasen, detaching the tzach off the ground is considered an asiyah because you're enabling it, you're activating it at this point. Here as well, picking those berries, which is machshir that adas, is considered the asiyah, and you're okay. Uman the puzzle, but the other shita who says puzzle, holds that just as by sukkah we don't say detaching the tzach is called the asiyah, because we look at the physical side of things. The tzach was on the sukkah bipsul, so now you have a detached tzach which just happens to be there by default. So we don't say detaching is called an asiyah. Likewise by lulav, which is derived from sukkah. We don't apply a concept of likita zu asiyah. We don't say picking berries. It's considered a ma'aseh. And since the ma'aseh, which ma'aseh of eged, of bundling the lulav, hadas, and rava together was done by psul, because at that point the hadas was laden with berries, the asiyah is not considered a proper asiyah. Because once again, the point of asiyah is to fashion a chevet shel mitzvah. When it's full of berries, it's an arayla mitzvah. Because that ma'aseh doesn't count. So after it's been bundled, he comes back and he picks off the berries. And as machshir the hadas, he didn't actually bundle it together. Because when he bundled it, it wasn't a kosher hadas. So the kitasen doesn't make an asiyah retroactively. So it seems indeed that the machlekes Rav and Shmuel is a machlekes Tanoim. Loi, says the Gemara, your premises aren't really substantiated. They're working with two hanachis, two notions. Number one, all agree you have to bundle together, tie together that lulav tzarech eget. And number two, we connect lulav to sukkah. And just as sukkah needs an asiyah, it needs to be fashioned manually. As a functioning sukkah, same thing regarding lulav. Right? That was the basis of this presentation. No, he says the Madukuli Amaloy Amrina Gabi Sukkah Ktitsasan Zoyasiyasan. Perhaps all shittas in this Mishnah would agree that by sukkah detachment is not an asiyah. So what then is machlekes? Machlekes is whether lulav needs an asiyah altogether. V'acha b'meilaf lulav misukah kamifli. Machlekes is whether we learn lulav from sukkah. Manda machsha. The Chacham will say picking those berries is considered fine. Savalei alfina lulav misukah. We don't learn lulav from sukkah. Just because sukkah needs an asiyah doesn't necessarily mean that lulav needs an asiyah as well. The Gemara just assumed that since sukkah has a masa, the Torah was makbid, that it should be done manually. Behechsher, huadin, lulav that needs a masa of eged, a bundling of tying together, has to be done in this manner. Not necessarily. Perhaps in this case, even if it happens to be bundled together from beforehand, that's also fine. That's one shita. That's a chachamim. So even though at the time of bundling it was possible, once he comes back and picks off those berries, even a default asiyah is fine. Uman the pasal savar, however, the other shita who says pasal holds, yalfina lulav misukah. We learn one from the other, and lulav needs an asiyah behechsher. And therefore you can't come back and pick those berries after it's been bound together with the other minim. Another pshat could be, perhaps the question revolves around whether or not lulav needs to be bound together with the other minim. Right? So we started with a hanach. We started with a premise that lulav needs to be bound together, tzarech eged, and number two, it needs to be an asiyah like by sukkah. That was the starting point of the discussion. So apparently the shaila is whether a retroactive ma'aser works. So first there was no. Perhaps, although lulav needs to be bound together, but not with a mas, you don't have to do it behechsher, even if it's just bound together by default. Meaning, even if during the binding together was not kosher yet. But since right now it's kosher and happens to be bound together, that's fine. Right? Perhaps that's the shaila between the two shittas. That was the first teretz. And second teretz will say, you know what? Maybe the machlekes is whether or not it needs to be bound together in the first place. You know, if they would hold that lulav needs to be bound, then you would have a concern. All would agree. Yeah, of course we would learn lulav from sukkah. And you need an asiyah behechsher. Machlekes is as follows. Mar savar tzorech heged. The Tanakama holds you have to bind them together. You have to create a new entity, in which case that asiyah has to be done behechsher. And therefore, if you come pick your berries later on, it's too late. Umar savar ein tzarech eged. Whereas the Chachamim hold, the lulav does not have to be bound together. You don't have to fashion the three minim into a single bundle, a single entity. There's no asiyah here altogether. So what's wrong with picking the berries after they've been bundled together? You're okay. So in conclusion, machlekes, when he picked off his berries, whether it's kosher or pasul, the assumption was all shittas hold lulav tzarech eged, and all shittas hold you need a manual asiyah. Apparently, machlekes is whether picking those berries is considered an asiyah or not. First answer to the Gemara was no. Perhaps all agree lulav tzarech eged. The question is whether or not you need an actual asiyah. Second teretz was the question is whether or not you even need an eged. Says the Gemara ur plukta dani tanai, and this is compatible with another machlekes tanai. The Sanya, lulav, bein ogud, bein she'ein ogud kosher. Whether or not the lulav is bound together with the hadas and the rava, that's fine. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ogud kosher. If it's tied together, it's fine. She'ein ogud pasul, but otherwise it's pasul. My time, Rabbi Yehuda. Yolaf lekicha, agudas ezav. He has a gzera shava, lulav from the bundle of grass, agudas ezav, used to smear the blood of the Korban Pesach and Mitzrayim. Ksiv hasam, lekachtam, agudas ezav. Over there it says, take lekachtam, the bundle of the ezer, uksiv hacha. And over here by Sukkah it says, lekachtam lachem v'yom harishon. So by lulav we have the word lekachtam. We say ma lahalim v'aguda, just as over there it had to be bound together in a bundle. Afkanami Baguda here as well. You need to bind them together. Says Rabbi Yehuda, for Rabbanon, they didn't have a Kabbalah to employ this Zera Shava, and therefore they don't have a din of Eged Bailul. If so, Keman Ozla Desanya, whose sheet is reflected in the following brayta, which says, Lulav Mitzvah La'agdai. It's a mitzvah to be Eged Lulav, Mitzvah La'agdai. Vim Loy Agdai Kasha. But even if he didn't do it, it's Kasha. How does this work? Rabbi Yehuda, if it's Rabbi Yehuda, Kiloi Agdai my Kasha. If he didn't do Eged, why is it Kasha? It's a requirement according to him. If the brayta says Rabbanon, I'm my mitzvah. Why would it even be a mitzvah to begin with? You know what? It's the Rabbanon. You don't have to do it, but it's nice. And we learn from there, beautify yourself before Hashem when you do mitzvahs. Rashi says, SUKKAH, lulavna, tzitzna, and bundling together the lulav, hadassim, and rovas in one bundle adds beauty. So you don't have to do it, but it's a mitzvah to do so. Mishnah tells us, SUKKAH is only kosher if it's not a complete utensil, if it's not mekabel tumah, and also it has to grow from the ground. How do we know this? The pasuk says, sit in sukkahs. Why? Because you meant to remember your experience when you left Mitzrayim, when I sat you in sukkahs. The Gemara assumes it's referring to the being enveloped by the Anani HaKavod. And therefore, we assume that the material used for the SUKKAH of today's sukkah is meant to resemble, meant to be close in nature to the Anani HaKavod, to those clouds of glory. And therefore it says Rish Lakish. What is a cloud? Amakra, the Eid Yalam in Aretz. The cloud rises up from the Aretz. So we see from there that steam, fog, clouds come up from the Aretz throughout the water cycle. So it comes up from the Aretz, and we learn like this: Ma'ed, just as a cloud, Dovar Shen Mekabel Tumah, something which is not Mekabel Tumah, it's not food or drink, it's just vapor. Number one, and number two, Vigdul Min Aretz, it comes out from the ground. Av Sukkah, likewise, our Sukkah today, which is meant to be reminiscent of those clouds in the Midbar, is also meant to have that type of material, which is similar in nature to a cloud. Dovar Shein Mekabel Tumah, and number two, Vigdul Min Aretz. Says the Gemara, that works according to the Shita that holds Anani Kavod Hayu. The Matorah says, sit in the Sukkah today because I sat you in Sukkahs way back. It's referring to the clouds of glory. Okay, so we understand that the cloud provides the benchmark for kashras of SUKKAH. Elul Mad Amar Sukkahs Mamash Asulam. But according to the Shita, that they had real Sukkahs when they left Mitzrayim. Perhaps those that were not right to be in the Anan, spit out of the Anan, as Rashi in the end of Kisete says, or some of Farshim say between the Egel and Yom Kippur, they didn't have the Anani HaKavod. So the Torah is simply saying, sit in Sukkahs today, so that you re-experience, that you remember the journey out of Mitzrayim. In which case, Michael and Mema. What are you going to say? How do you know what they used for their Sukkahs? Maybe they used Kalim. The Sanya, as we learned in the Brisa. There are two opinions. Pasuk says, sit in the Sukkah, ki ba Sukkahs yeshavti, es bnei Yisrael, because I sat the Yidden in Sukkahs, way back when. Anani Kavod hayu, referring to the Anani HaKavod, they were enveloped in the clouds. The Rebbe Lezer, ki ba Sukkahs mamish, Oslam, they made real shacks. So according to Rebbe Lezer, if it's referring to the clouds, fine. So clouds are enim kabel tumah, gedula min aretz. Elul Rebbe Kiva Michael Meimer, according to Rebbe Kiva, that we're just sitting today in a sukkah to remember the journey out of Mitzrayim, to remember the huts that they experienced then. How do you know what they used for their sukkahs? Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he quoted Rabbi Yochanan, who provided a source. Amar Kro Chag HaSukkahs Taslacha. And we learn that the sukkah is meant to resemble a chag. What's chag? The shlamim, the carbon. Mak is sukkah l'chagiga. We connect sukkah to the chagiga. Ma chagiga davar she'enim kabel tumah. Just as the carbon, which is an animal, is not kabel tumah while he's alive. Number one. V'gedul min aretz, and he's sustained by the earth. He grows off the ground. He eats off the ground. Sukkah, likewise, the sukkah material is meant to be the same thing. Davar she'enim kabel tumah. V'gedul min aretz. Be'ez Hashem. We'll continue on this topic tomorrow. Let's just do a quick chazar of today's daf and discuss the kilas chasanim, because it's so not kavua. Even if it's very high and tall, you can sleep beneath it. Schach kasher is something which is gedulim in aretz, which is not mekabel tumah, and of course detached from the ground as well. By a sukkah, and by tzitzis, we need an asiyah. It says Chag HaSukkah is taslacha. Gedilim taslacha. Let's say he used schach mechuber and then detached it. According to Rav, that's okay. According to Shmuel, you have to actually shake it as well. Sending by tzitzis. He tied on the strings, which are not yet roy. According to Rav, just snip them. Detach the loops. According to Shmuel, that doesn't work. And we learned that there's machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda who holds lulav tzarech agad. Chacham will say you don't need it, but it's nice to do so. Zekeli maveu. Kol tov to you and atzlacha Rab.